I'm gonna have to step over here. Jerry, you're following me.
Gentlemen,
Sorry, guys. You have to step up.
blocking the cameras.
Sir, you have to back up a little bit.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Just step over here. Gene, you have to easy way side.
Well, good afternoon. Police from Mr. Ray Kelly, Queens District Attorney Richard Brown, and Chuck Mira, the Chief of Staff, to Council Speaker Christine Quinn, Joe Adabo, State Senator, and James Sanders, the City Councilman, and I have just expressed our condolences and the condolences of all New Yorkers to our city's Sikh community. That includes the President of the Sikh Cultural Center, Gurdev Singh Kag, and the newly installed chair of this Sikh Cultural Center, Mohan Singh Katra. Mohan lost an uncle in the Wisconsin massacre. Yesterday, in the space of a few hours, he both assumed that office and also had suffered this terrible tragedy in his family, and our condolences go out to him. But I think it's fair to say New Yorkers of every faith join the Sikh community in praying for the recovery of those gravely wounded in that terrible attack. In the wake of the shootings yesterday, representatives of our Community Affairs Unit, headed by Nazli Pavesi, reached out to the Sikh community to offer assistance and support, and as you can well imagine, the Sikh community is in shock and in mourning. New York, and particularly Southeast Queens, is the center of Sikh life in the United States, and community leaders say there are roughly 15,000 Sikhs who live in Richmond Hill and nearby neighborhoods. This is a very close-knit and hard-working community, one whose faith urges them to practice self-discipline and good deeds towards others. In fact, the vice chair of the 102nd Precinct Council is Mr. Harbans Dillon, who is also a past chair of the Cultural Society. And this is also a very resilient community. As you know, about 9 years ago, I was here when a fire completely destroyed the Sikh temple, and I remember coming here to survey the damage. The community rebuilt after that disaster, and I think it's fair to say the community's faith will sustain them now as well. In addition to bringing condolences from everyone and offering our prayers, I want to underscore a message to the Sikh community and to all New Yorkers. And it's simply this: no matter who you are, no matter where you're from, no matter what religion you profess, you have a right to be safe in your homes, in your places of worship, and on the streets of New York City. We have no tolerance for intolerance or for lawless violence. They go against everything that New York, the safest big city in the nation, is all about. And this remains a city where people of every nationality live in harmony and where people of every faith worship in freedom. And that's essential to who we are as New Yorkers. It is our heritage, and it is in our hearts. In fact, more than 100 years before the Declaration of Independence, the people of Queens took a stand for religious freedom. Residents of the town of Flushing sent a letter to then-Governor Peter Stuyvesant reminding him that, quote, "The law of love, peace, and liberty" covered people of every faith who wanted to live in the then, as it was called, the colony of New Amsterdam. That was the spirit of the people of New Amsterdam back in 1657. It is the spirit and the law of New York City today, and that's the great strength of our city, and we're not about to lose sight of that. There's something else that we shouldn't lose sight of either. Just 2 weeks after the tragedy in Aurora, we've seen another mass shooting, one in which it appears that there was some warning signs about the shooter. And still, the two presidential candidates have not given the American public a plan to keep guns out of the hands of dangerous people. Every day, 34 Americans are murdered with guns. The fact that criminals, terrorists, and other mentally ill all have easy access to guns is a national crisis. We have lost over 400,000 Americans to illegal guns, which is more since 1968. That is more than the number of Americans that were killed in World War II. And the two presidential candidates cannot continue avoiding an issue that is one of the most serious threats we face as a nation and for our security. There have, thankfully, been no threats made against the Sikh community here, nor do I expect any. After all, this is New York. But we have to take preparatory and precautionary steps, some visible and some not, and you can rest assured that we will do so to deter any such actions. To say a bit more about that, let me now turn the floor over to Police Commissioner Ray Kelly. Ray?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too want to express my condolences to the family of Mohan Singh Katra and to the entire Sikh community for the horrific events that happened yesterday in Wisconsin. As the mayor said, I want to emphasize that we have no information that indicates a threat to Sikh temples here in New York City. When we received information of the shootings yesterday, we immediately dispatched additional resources to Sikh temples here in New York. We used our critical response vehicles who are normally assigned to counterterrorism duties. We did that to certainly ease concerns in the Sikh community. We also contacted the FBI and other law enforcement agencies to see if there was any information that indicated any threat to Sikhs here in New York. Now, just as this tragedy has affected the Sikh family, it certainly has affected the NYPD family as well. Brian Murphy, the lieutenant who was shot yesterday, was shot 9 times and is in critical condition, is the brother of Terry Murphy, who is a detective who just retired from the Intelligence Division, the New York City Police Department, just a month ago. But I can assure you that we're going to continue to monitor this issue. We're going to keep our presence at these locations in place, and we'll make that determination on a day-to-day basis. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
District Attorney Brown, Judge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Only to add my voice to that which has already been said, our deep sympathy goes out to the victim's family, and the Sikh community here in Queens. We are, as you know, the most diverse county in the nation, and the Sikh community is a very important part of our life here in Queens County. And secondly, of course, to underscore that which the mayor has indicated, these acts of violence with guns have got to stop. And I commend the mayor and the police commissioner for all the work that they're doing nationwide to help to make it stop. Beyond that, Mr. Mayor, I wanted to express my sympathy to everyone here.
Thank you. We'll take a question or two if anybody has any. Yes, miss.
You've been on the forefront of gun control. You said a lot about gun control. Will the city change its policy?
We're actually on the forefront, I think, of crime control, and guns are one of the reasons that we have high crime. But we're not opposed to guns. As a matter of fact, the Constitution of the United States gives you explicitly the right to have a gun, subject to what the Supreme Court has ruled is perfectly legal, reasonable restrictions and regulations.
That wasn't my question, though.
I know, but I just want to clarify, because what you said was not true. We are not here for gun control.
Okay. Will the city change its bidding policy so that it would not be possible for an ammunition dealer to buy
Miss, it's a
NYPD shell casings?
No, it is number one, you'd have to change it for everything, and we want to have the policy continue of the city having to sell to the highest bidder. This is the public's money that we are stewards of, and deliberately deciding to sell things at lower prices than the marketplace commands makes no sense, and if you think about it, it would create chaos and corruption like you've never seen. In terms, Miss, either you want to ask a question and then give me an answer, or please come to the next press conference and stand in the back, and we'll be happy to answer your question. We're happy to answer your question. Thank you very much. But I've given you the courtesy, and I expect the same courtesy. Thank you very much. In the case, we have always sold scrap metal, and that's all this is. These are not bullets. These are scrap metal casings that are used and are only useful to be melted down, whether one dealer melts it down or a buyer of scrap metal melts it down and then sells the metal to the ammunition manufacturer. It is exactly the same process and leads you in exactly the same place. In this case, I suspect that what happened is, in order to give you a story, somebody went, a manufacturer of ammunition, and bought a very tiny amount of the metal that they would be using every day. That gives you a story to rile up everybody, but the truth of the matter is it is just a little bit of scrap metal, which we have to, by law, a law that makes a lot of sense, sell to the highest bidder, and we will continue to do that. We have any questions, sir?
You said that the candidates don't have any plan. I mean, have you tried to engage either Ron
You can rest assured, personally and through the press.
What's been the latest thing?
A deafening silence, I think, is a fair way to phrase it. Neither candidate has been willing to address the issue. With the Aurora, and I would expect it with Wisconsin, but with the Aurora, Colorado shooting, the president did represent the country, as he should have, and he expressed remorse and sympathy. That's appropriate. So did Governor Romney. But neither of those statements had anything to do with stopping the next massacre, stopping the fact that we have more guns than people in this country and that 34 people a day are killed. This was 6, and you can see the outpouring. Why is it different? Because it was in one place at one time. But every day there are 34 killed. Where is the outrage over that? And during the next president's term, 48,000 Americans are going to be murdered. A lot more killed because you also have homicides or suicides and you have accidents. But 48,000 Americans will be murdered in the next 4 years. And so far, we haven't heard from either candidate a plan, a concrete plan that makes some sense to get the problem solved. Yes, Smith.
Mayor, I wonder 2 points. Number one, how much longer will you and others tolerate the so-called deafening silence in front of the candidates? And tell us specifically what
I don't know what tolerate means. So I thought we ran an ad yesterday in Washington on television. I thought I'd just talk to you here and talk to you earlier. It's twice today. There's no deafening silence. But we don't run the federal government, and we aren't running for president. The two people that want to be president, I think, have an obligation to stand up and to tell the American public what they're going to do. Period. End of story. Yes, Miss.
Why do you think Americans are so complacent, and what should they be doing?
When we do the polling, they are not complacent. Something like 80% of all gun owners, for example, don't think it's appropriate to sell assault weapons. Assault rifles are used for only one reason: to kill people. Armor-piercing bullets are used for only one reason: to kill police officers who wear armor-resistant vests. It's time we did something about it. And I'm not here to set the policy. I'm just here as a concerned citizen, as a mayor of a city where the commissioner and the district attorney and I have the obligation to keep people safe. And we've done it. But it's still, we're going to have a record low number of murders, but we're going to have still 400 and close to 500 murders. And that's an outrage. It shouldn't be. And the problem is the guns come from all over this country. Micro-stamping would help. Closing the gun show loopholes would help, because 40% of the guns are now sold either over the internet or in gun shows, so the requirement to do a background check doesn't apply. And a lot of states aren't giving the data to the database, so we don't know who has a mental problem, who is a convicted felon, who is a minor, who is, well, that one you can figure out, who is a drug addict, who, of all of the categories that federal law currently says you can't have it. Congress did what it always does. It passes a law, it sounds strong, and then if you look at it, it's a joke. We'll take one more question if we, yes, sir. Last question.
One of the leaders of the temple to tell us, do you
Sure.
feel safe in the temple? Have there been any threats or incidents here? And tell us about what the impact is of what happened.
Give your name.
Harpreet Singh Tour. It is HARPREET SINGHTOOR. We have always felt safe in New York City, and if you really look at it, you will find the majority of the Punjabis and the Sikhs in particular living in tri-state area, and again, vast majority in New York City. And when, like Honorable Mayor mentioned before, when the fire took place, he was the first one to come in. After we started a temporary prayer place, again he was one of them, and today this thing happened and he's here. And they are already taking the precautions and everything what we expect them to do so that that copycat doesn't happen. And I'm pretty sure the President would also like to say something. The President of the Society, Mr. Kang.
First
Give
of
them
all,
your name and how to spell it.
my name is Gurdev Singh Kang. I'm the president of Sikh Cultural Society. First of all, I'm thank you, Mr. Mayor, and our police commissioner and our district attorney, Richard Brown. They came over here and they admit their obligation to protect the New York City, and which way we are very feel today is safe, because since they happened the incident yesterday, NYPD they came right over here and they go all the other our temples, and we feel safe and we feel the confidence in our NYPD. And like my other friend said, we are like Americans. It's a different look. I think some kind of in this world is a lot of crazy people too. Maybe there should be a hate crime or some kind of misidentity, and that's why we request to the city of the New York City mayor, we want our Sikh people in the NYPD, which one they keep the policy, they can keep the beard and our turban while they was doing as a job in NYPD. This way we have a more demonstration our identity. But one thing I want to say is happen anywhere, we feel very bad. This is in the place of worship is more worse. People coming over here, any religious place, people go for a worship, and when they're praying for a God and they get killed and their loved ones, they were home and they are not going back home, this is a terrible accident. And we are I'm appeal to our whole Sikh community, be peaceful, and we are confident of our New York City Police Department and Mayor and NYPD, and we request all the people, and they are really fully cooperating with each one. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let me add that Chuck Mira representing Christine Quinn is here, Joe Adabo from the State Senate, and James Sanders from the City Council, and we appreciate all of their sympathies for this community. And lastly, you should know that there are something like 19 Sikhs that do work as for the police department. Thank you very much. This is very tragic, and hopefully our elected officials and those who want to lead this country will do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I help you out of here, sir?
You sure? Everybody's best bet is to go this way.